Listen, you can't say that men who fight in a cage for a living have no heart. I'm telling you, these guys have the most courage you've ever seen in any sport. There's no sport that requires more courage, more toughness than MMA. There's no sport. There's just no sport. Anybody who says otherwise just has never stepped in the fight. Boxing is scary. Muay Thai is scary. Even Jiu-Jitsu is, it's a bit nerve-wracking, Wrestling's nerve-wracking, but fighting MMA is just another level. Why? Because if you fall down, we'll get on top of you. These guys are allowed to elbow you. They're allowed to knee you to the head. There's some very dangerous attacks that you're allowed to do in this sport. O'Malley's out there, this is the culmination of his life's training. He's there, and the ball doesn't bounce his way. He gets kicked in a weird way that if he got kicked 100 times, that wouldn't even happen. If he got kicked 1,000 times, that would happen once. What happened to him on that night? Lightning strikes. And look, the guy, the body has limitations. He fell. He didn't throw himself on his back. He didn't give up. He actually kept fighting. He switched hands. Did you guys see what O'Malley did when he got kicked and his foot fell asleep? He doesn't know exactly what's going on. It's happening in the moment. He switched stance immediately. And he was like, hey, what's going on? And he fell. He lost his balance. On the bottom, he didn't give up. He didn't say, hey, I have no leg underneath me. This is crazy that you expect me to keep fighting this way. Not at all. The man kept fighting. He got caught. But the guy has a heart of a lion. No doubt about it. That kick to the leg. Let me tell you something. I know a lot of you might not have seen this. It was kind of weird, right? He got kicked in the leg. He switched stance, and then his foot wasn't working. If you've watched thousands of fights, you'll have seen that before. I've seen it before. I've had in all my years of training fighters. I've been training fighters for 20 years. Professional fighters for 20 years. I know I'm a young person, but MMA was very young when I started. So even though we were training professionally, we didn't know much 20 years ago. We just kind of grew with the sport, because there was no old-time MMA coach. We had boxing coaches, we had wrestling coaches, but there was no MMA coach who'd been doing it for 20 years. The sport just started. I've seen it just in my fighters, twice. It's a rare occurrence, but how many times have I seen in professional sports? I would say I don't know, maybe a dozen times. It doesn't happen often, but I've seen it before. A guy gets kicked behind the knee and his foot falls asleep and he doesn't even know it. He's fighting, and he goes to step and his heel rolls over and his foot's flopping around. And he doesn't even notice what's going on. He might figure it out as he's fighting, but it's not like he got kicked in the leg and the leg kick was so bad that he's in pain. No, the guy's not grimacing. He's just still fighting, but that nerve got hit and it kind of fell asleep. And I had one fighter get kicked like that. His foot rolled over and he was kind of stumbling, and then it came back to life, and then he knocked his opponent out. I've seen that also. And I've had one fighter get kicked like that, stumble over because his foot's asleep. And after his foot is asleep, he tries to step, falls over, and they stop the fight because they think he's injured or whatnot, and the guy got on top of him or whatnot. Both those fighters that had that issue, after the fight, they walked around like nothing. Their ankle was perfectly fine. Their knee was perfectly fine. There was no bruising. There was no anything. It was like a nerve thing, and I don't know what nerve it is or whatnot, but I've seen it before. For instance, it happened to, it's happened quite a few times in UFC as well. It happened to Henry Cejudo with Demetrius Johnson, and his foot fell asleep. It actually happened to Demetrius Johnson as well when he fought Miguel Torres. Your foot kind of falls asleep. It's kind of a weird thing, and it revives back if you give it the time. That's what I've seen. It revives back. I believe it's also happened to Chandler. That's right. It happened to Michael Chandler. That's correct. That's another great example. This time he threw the kick, comes back. He kicked his opponent, didn't grimace, wasn't in pain, was still fighting, and all of a sudden his foot's asleep and his ankle's rolling over. It's a weird thing, guys, but if you've watched a lot of MMA, you've seen it. You've watched a lot of kickboxing, it's happened. It happened to Sean O'Malley. Now listen, here's another thing. It could have been a pre-existing injury. Could have been maybe he hurt his ankle weeks before his fight and he didn't want to pull out, and he went in there, and when he got kicked, he got injured or whatnot. I don't think it was. I think it was one of those weird rarity. You know, it's happened to Sean O'Malley before when he fought early on. He had hurt his leg and he was stumbling and he finished the fight hopping on one foot. So maybe he has a bad leg. Maybe he has an old reoccurring injury. But I've seen that kind of weird thing where your foot falls asleep, and it's because of a kick. That kick worked. It landed. It connected. Marlon wins. Fantastic job. Incredible performance by him. And we have to give him the nod.